Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyaya and you are watching World Today. We are starting off this edition of World Today with a breaking news because Government of India has reacted and responded to President Donald Trump's jibe and comment targeting India. After Donald Trump threatens more substantial tariffs on India, the Government of India hits back at United States of America. Ministry of External Affairs has clearly stated out in the statement that European Union is importing more from the Russia as compared to India, and in fact India began importing from Russia because traditional supplies were diverted to Europe after the outbreak of the conflict. The United States at that time actively encouraged such imports by India for strengthening the global energy market. In this background, the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. This is what the Government of India has said in Ministry of External Affairs in a statement. Clearly hits out at the US President and United States government for its remarks targeting India. Like any major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interest and economic security. So this is what Government of India has to say in response to President Donald Trump's remarks. And I'm being joined by my colleague Shivani Sharma. Shivani, clearly Government of India has responded in very strong statement, against the US government. What more you can add?
Pranay, this is a very strong response that has come from the MEA and from India on the remarks that the US president has been making, especially about how India is dealing with Russia, which happens to be a close tie. And now in this particular statement, this is a long, detailed statement, Pranay, where India has said that India has been targeted by the United States and European Union for importing oil from Russia. But in fact, what the statement also says, Pranay, that these nations themselves have been importing a lot of goods from Russia. And initially, when this happened after the Russia-Ukraine war, there were appreciations that were happening from United States itself because India was balancing the whole market, or especially the energy market. And now the United States president has been targeting India, and now without naming president here, Pranay, its response is certainly for United States President Donald Trump from Indian side, because he's the one who's been bringing out a lot of statements. The latest happens to be, which was posted today evening, and after which this response has come, where India has also said that this kind of targeting will not be accepted. This is unreasonable.
You're absolutely right, Shivani. This kind of targeting cannot be accepted and cannot be tolerated, and that's why the Government of India has reacted to US President Donald Trump's remarks. Thank you, Shivani, for joining us and tracking this story. And President Donald Trump and his team are accusing India of financing Russian war by purchasing oil from Moscow. In a very recent post on Truth Social, President Donald Trump accused India of buying oil and then selling it to open market for big profit. He also accused India of not caring about the number of people killed in Ukraine by the Russian war machine.
Is India the new Donald Trump obsession? What is making Trump and his team go after India as India navigates to counter the 25% tariff while maintaining a bilateral relation with the US? The Trump cabinet seems to continue the India jibe which the president started last week. Trump, who has time and again called India a friend and praised Russian President Vladimir Putin, has suddenly directed his attacks against these two countries. Trump accusing India of having the highest tariffs in the world, thus letting the world's oldest democracy to do relatively little business. He also said India has obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers, even as India and the US are talking to reach a deal on bilateral trade. Trump has also announced to levy an unspecified additional penalty on India for what he called buying a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy. But now one of the top Trump's aides has accused India of financing Russia's war in Ukraine by purchasing oil from Moscow.
So what he said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products.
But this is not the only case. Earlier, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Trump, along with the US trade negotiators, was a bit frustrated with the Indian side and said India has not been a great global actor.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. It'll be up to India. India came to the table early. They've been slow rolling things. So I think that the president, the whole trade team's a bit frustrated with them. And also, India's been a large buyer of sanctioned Russian oil that they then resell as refined products. So they have not been a great global actor.
India's had a market that's been pretty much closed to American products, and we've been wide open to theirs. And I think President Trump is frustrated with the progress we've made with India, but feels that a 25% tariff will address and remedy the situation in a way that's good for the American people.
And the same was reiterated by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio during the Brian Kilmeade radio show on Fox News.
India is an ally. It's a strategic partner. Like anything in foreign policy, you're not going to align 100% of the time on everything. India has huge energy needs, and that includes the ability to buy oil and coal and gas and things that it needs to power its economy, like every country does. And it buys it from Russia because Russian oil is sanctioned and cheap, and meaning they have to, in many cases, are selling it under the global price because of their sanctions.
Yep.
And that, unfortunately, that is helping to sustain the Russian war effort. So it is most certainly a point of irritation in our relationship with India.
But is this a Trump tactics to isolate Russia from its allies and neighbors? First, he accused Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky of gambling with World War III. Then Pentagon, for a brief period, paused supply of weapons to Ukraine. But then, after a phone call with President Putin, Trump said he was very disappointed. But the US-Russia war of words escalated after former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev described Trump's ultimatum if Moscow did not reach a deal as a step towards war. Trump, who asked Medvedev to watch his words, ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions. But India, which has been maintaining that it is not an era of war, cannot be targeted for following its geopolitical strategy of maintaining relations with its ally Russia, while the US is making investments in developing oil reserves of Pakistan, which is harboring terror masterminds. Bureau Report, India Today.
So what President Donald Trump is trying to do, is it about getting a trade deal from India, or his remark could cost India-US strategic partnership? To discuss this issue in further detail, I am being joined by Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Welcome to World Today, sir. My first question to you would be, President Donald Trump has recently announced 25% tariff on Indian goods, and he has stirred, a controversy in India. President Donald Trump is now accusing India of not only fueling the war machine of Russia, but also holding Indians responsible for Ukrainian life and losses. How can India and the United States navigate this tariff dispute to keep trade talks on track and the partnership on track?
Yeah, obviously he is looking for a reaction because India has made every effort now. Its purchase of US energy has gone up by almost 150%. And he's just trying to poke at India to get its reaction. But you don't basically build relationship by tweet and provoking nations. I think you build it by looking at what's overall bigger partnership and then try to manage that.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Aghi, that such kind of relationship cannot be built on social media post. So obviously, Trump aides are accusing India of financing Russia war. They should be telling President Donald Trump about this, that social media post cannot build a relationship. But on the other side, we have seen series of statements by the Trump administration senior officials that India is financing Russia's war, purchasing crude oil, linking it to the tariff penalty, and giving India strategic energy ties with Russia. How should New Delhi respond to maintain its strong partnership with the United States?
Well, India is a sovereign country. It has to basically look at what's good for India. And if strategic relationship with Russia works, then it has to pursue that. And I think that's where we have to explain to the Trump administration also that you cannot basically take your own interests at somebody else's expenses. So it is important that that communication comes in, but you can't do this through media or through social or through Twitter, through basically X. There has to be done behind the scene, and that's what we're working on between the two countries.
But Mr. Agi, Indian government is mindful of this relationship. So what, in your opinion, what India should take steps to address the Trump's concern about the high tariffs and secure a balanced agreement that benefit both the economies?
Well, the objective, if you look at the trade between the two countries, is approximately $200 billion. And in February, when the Prime Minister came in agreement with President Trump, they targeted to take it to $500 billion by 2030. And what we are seeing is the momentum is there. And hopefully, once you have a lower tariff between the two countries, it will expedite the trade between the two countries. So I think the objective is there. Now we need to go execute on that objective.
But Mr. Agi, in the recent statement as well as his meeting, President Donald Trump seemed to be embracing Pakistan, including a trade deal, lower tariff, raising concerns in India. How can India strategically position itself to ensure that the US-Pakistan warming up of ties doesn't determine or undermine the India-US strategic partnership?
Well, Trump is going to deal with over 200 countries in his strategy on tariff. What it does with Pakistan does not matter to India because India is a 11 times larger economy. It is growing much faster. It has a massive cash reserve in foreign exchange, where Pakistan is almost bankrupt. So I don't think by what Trump is doing with Pakistan should matter to India because India continues to move in the positive direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agi, for joining with us and sharing your perspective on this issue. We all hope that India-US partnership remains on track. Moving on, President Donald Trump's statements are causing concern globally, especially in India, and causing concern in India-US strategic partnership. But on the other side, President Donald Trump and his administration is also facing challenges, especially with the federal agencies. President Donald Trump has ordered to fire the Commissioner of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre. And this decision came after her report on July jobs showed a sharp decline in hiring. President Donald Trump accused the commissioner of lifting the employment numbers to an all-time high just before the presidential election, only to bring it down after Trump won the election. In his earlier social media post, President Donald Trump has called her for her immediate removal and to be replaced by a more competent and a qualified person. President Donald Trump had promised that tariffs on other countries will make American economy strong, thus fulfilling his election campaign of MAGA, or Make America Great Again. But this seems to be not true, as Trump levied higher tariffs on countries, including a 25% tariff on India, with an additional unspecified penalty for buying weapons and energy from Russia. The recent data by the labor statistics tell a different story. Besides rising unemployment, consumer prices too are soaring. Growth has slowed to an annualized 1.8% in quarter 2, far below from 3 to 4% Trump administration has promised. Inflation is rising again, with core consumer price index up by 3.6% on year-on-year basis. Job creation has dropped below expectation for the second straight month. Real wages are stagnating, and most of the job losing are being reported from the manufacturing sector. That sector for which President Donald Trump has promised a lot of big things. But still, Trump's rhetoric remains that tariff will protect American jobs, interest rate cuts will fuel a housing revival, and the deregulating will eventually drive the corporate investment. On this big story, I'm being joined by Clifford Young, the president of Ipsos, Washington, D.C. He's joining from Washington, D.C. Mr. Clifford, the latest job report of the U.S. government shows that 73,000 jobs added in July, with big downwardly revision for May and June. Is this slowdown a direct result of President Donald Trump's tariff, or other factors are at play?
Well, that's a difficult one to determine, but what we can say is it's not good for him long term. Indeed, his approval ratings which are very important from a political perspective, that say a lot about whether he can push the agenda forward, have been relatively stable, relatively strong. He's in a better position than he was in 2017. But we're seeing weakening around the edges. There are storm clouds on the horizons. He has declined faster than the historic average at 6 months. The historic average is 5 points approval rating. He's at 8. Probably this has to do with fear about tariffs. But once again, cause and effect is difficult, but this is not good for him looking forward.
But Mr. Young, President Donald Trump is pushing tariff to boost US manufacturing sector. But what we are seeing is that the factory jobs have dropped to 11,000 last month. So are these policies backfiring, or is it too early to judge their success?
Well, I think most economists would say that these sorts of policies would take a long time, longer than a few months, obviously. It takes a lot to uproot a factory one place and implant a factory in the United States. From a public opinion standpoint, Americans are really worried about tariffs in general. There's lots of trepidation and unease. However, that said, when you ask them about bringing jobs back or manufacturing industry back, there's a majority of Americans that believe that. And this is what Trump is actually playing into right now, this belief among a majority of Americans that in the long term, not necessarily short term, but in the long term, tariffs will have a positive impact on America.
Mr. Young, your recent Reuters Ipsos poll found that 70% of the Americans expect tariff to hike prices. How much are these concerns affecting the public confidence in President Donald Trump's economic strategies?
Yeah, well, I don't believe much, at least in the long term. Without a doubt, public opinion in America associates tariffs with inflation. It's highly inflationary in Americans' minds. What we can say is a few months ago, when Trump first was pushing his tariff agenda, it was creating lots of friction, lots of worry. He pulled back. And so at least in the short term, we've seen some effect on his own behavior and how he's managed this agenda. But I really think that he and his administration are thinking in long-term goals, and they will take whatever it costs in the short term to implement the policy to get this return in the long term.
A very last question before I let you go. That with the US economy growing at a sluggish 1.2% in the first half of 2025, do you think that President Donald Trump's tariff-driven trade war is delivering the economic edge, what he promised, or is it creating more uncertainties?
Yeah, again, it's short versus long term. There are a lot of arguments about the long term potential benefits of tariffs. Let's set that aside. In the short term, it's creating lots of chaos, lots of uncertainty. And I believe the economic numbers we're seeing today are a function and part of this uncertainty, not just among the American public or among households, but among American business leaders who are pulling back on investments, who are careful how they spend. So yes, there is an effect on behavior, individual and company behavior in the United States in the short term.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clifford Young, for joining us and sharing your perspective and especially your comment about the US economy and its outlook. Moving on to another big story. Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir sparked widespread condemnation by visiting and praying at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem on 3rd of August, defying a long-standing status quo arrangement governing one of the Middle East's most sensitive sites. During his visit, Ben-Gvir led a group of Jewish settlers to the compound, which Muslims call Haram al-Sharif or Noble Sanctuary. The site is considered sacred by both Muslims and Jews, with the former believing it House of Islam's third holiest site and the latter referring it to the Temple Mount. Widespread condemnation erupted across Palestine and the Arab world after Ben-Gvir offered prayers there. Under a long-held status quo, Jews are allowed to visit the site but not to pray there. However, an increasing number of far-right Israeli extremists have prayed at the site in recent years. And now let's move on to neighborhood. Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party today announced that it will hold nationwide protest on 5th of August on the second anniversary of the arrest of the party founder and former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Khan was arrested on August 5th, 2023 from his residence in Lahore after being convicted by a court in corruption case. He has been incarcerated since his arrest due to conviction in other cases and is currently being held at the Adiala jail in Rawalpindi. TTAP Secretary General Asad Kaisar and PTI leader in a press conference held at the PTI District Secretariat in Swabi, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, announced that on August 5th, a nationwide protest will be held under the flags of Pakistan, the PTI and the white flag of peace. He said that on August 5th, this date marks the completion of 2 years since Khan was illegally arrested, and the opposition will hold peaceful protests throughout Pakistan. Kaisar emphasized that the movement would remain entirely within the constitutional and legal framework and would be conducted peacefully. He said, if there is any evidence against Khan, then it should be presented in the open court. The PTI has finalized its plan of action for 5th of August protest according to Khan's instruction. Instead of marching towards Islamabad or holding a central rally, it has been decided that the protest will be held in every district.
Tomorrow, on August 5th, our leader Imran Khan has announced the start of a movement across Pakistan, and our preparations for the protest on the 5th are complete. The provincial organization will protest at various locations. Our movement is peaceful and our struggle is within the framework of the law and the constitution.
And now moving on to military theatre. China and Russia have launched their joint C-2025 military exercise, showcasing naval coordination and strategic partnership. The drill aims to enhance maritime security cooperation and demonstrate growing military ties between the two nations amid rising global tensions. The drill was conducted 2 days after the United States President Donald Trump deployed 2 nuclear submarines to the appropriate region in response to comments by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. The Chinese and Russian governments have deepened their ties in recent years, with China providing an economic lifeline to Russia in the face of Western sanctions over Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Chinese Defense Ministry said in a statement that the joint C-2025 exercise kicked off in waters near the Russian port of Vladivostok and would last for 3 days. The two sides will hold submarine rescue, joint anti-submarine operations, air defense and anti-missile operations, and maritime combat maneuvers. 4 Chinese vessels, including guided missile destroyer Shaoxiang and Urumqi, are participating in the exercise alongside the Russian ships. TikTok removed a video by beauty mogul Huda Khattan, founder and CEO of the billion-dollar Huda Beauty brand, after she reportedly claimed that Israel was behind major conflicts, including World War I, World War II, the 9/11 terror attacks, and the Hamas-led October 7 attack. According to reports, in the now deleted TikTok post shared to over 11 million followers, Khattan said that all the conspiracy theories coming out about Israel, they allowed all of this to happen, and added, "Is this crazy? I had a feeling, yes." The video quickly went viral and generated backlash from the Jewish advocacy groups, the retailers, and the social media users. In the past, Khattan has accused Jews of organ harvesting and running global pedophile rings, and report added.
It's actually quite slow. Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
And that's all for today's edition of World Today. For more international stories, do log on to India Today Global on YouTube. Good night and take care.